The AK-47 is a selective-fire, gas-operated 7.62 x 39 mm assault rifle, developed in the Soviet Union by Mikhail Kalashnikov. It is officially known in the Soviet documentation as Automat Kalashnikova. Design work on the AK-47 began in the last year of World War II. In 1946, the AK-47 was presented for official military trials, and in 1948, the fixed-stock version was introduced into active service with selected units of the Soviet Army. An early development of the design was the AKS, which was equipped with an underfolding metal shoulder stock. In 1949, the AK-47 was officially accepted by the Soviet Armed Forces and used by the majority of the member states of the Warsaw Pact. Even after 6 decades, the model and its variants remain the most popular and widely used assault rifles in the world because of their substantial reliability under harsh conditions, low production costs compared to contemporary Western weapons, availability in virtually every geographic region, and ease of use. The AK-47 has been manufactured in many countries and has seen service with armed forces as well as irregular forces worldwide, and was the basis for developing many other types of individual and crew-served firearms. As of 2004, of the estimated 500 million firearms worldwide, approximately 100 million belong to the Kalashnikov family, 3/4 of which are AK-47s. History. Origins. Throughout World War II, Soviet soldiers found themselves consistently outgunned by heavily armed German troops, especially those armed with the Sturmgewehr STG-44 assault rifles, which the Germans fielded in large numbers. The select-fire STG-44 was chambered for a new intermediate cartridge, the 7.92 x 33 mm Kurz, and combined the firepower of a submachine gun with the range and accuracy of a rifle. On 15 July 1943, a Sturmgewehr was demonstrated before the People's Commissariat of Arms of the USSR. The Soviets were so impressed with the Sturmgewehr that they immediately set about developing an intermediate caliber automatic rifle of their own, to replace the badly outdated Moss and Nagant bolt-action rifles and PPSH-41 submachine guns that armed most of the Soviet army. The Soviets soon developed the 7.62 x 39 mm M43 cartridge, the semi-automatic SKS carbine and the RPD light machine gun. Shortly after World War II, the Soviets developed the AK-47 assault rifle, which would quickly replace the SKS in Soviet service. In the 1960s, the Soviets introduced the RPK light machine gun, itself an AK-47 type weapon with a stronger receiver, a longer heavy barrel, and a bipod, that would eventually replace the RPD light machine gun concept. The AK-47 is best described as a hybrid of previous rifle technology innovations. Kalashnikov decided to design an automatic rifle combining the best features of the American M1 and the German STG-44. Kalashnikov's team had access to these weapons and had no need to reinvent the wheel. Kalashnikov himself observed, "A lot of Russian army soldiers ask me how one can become a constructor, and how new weaponry is designed. These are very difficult questions. Each designer seems to have his own paths, his own successes and failures. But one thing is clear. Before attempting to create something new, it is vital to have a good appreciation of everything that already exists in this field. I myself have had many experiences confirming this to be so." There are claims about Kalashnikov copying other designs, like Balkan's TKB-415 or Simonov's AVS-31. Early designs. Mikhail Kalashnikov began his career as a weapon designer while hospitalized after he was wounded in the shoulder during the Battle of Bryansk. Kalashnikov started tinkering with a submachine gun design in 1942 and with a light machine gun in 1943. Early in 1944, Kalashnikov was given some M1943 7.62 x 39 mm cartridges and informed that there were several designers working on weapons for this new Soviet small arms cartridge. It was suggested to him that this new weapon might well lead to greater things, and he undertook work on the new rifle. In 1944, he entered a design competition with this new 7.62 x 39 mm semi-automatic, gas-operated, long-stroke piston carbine, strongly influenced by the American M1 Garand. The rifle that Kalashnikov designed was in the same class as the familiar AK-47 Simonov with fixed magazine and gas tube above the barrel. However, this new Kalashnikov design lost out to a Simonov design. In 1946, a new design competition was initiated to develop a new assault rifle. Kalashnikov submitted an entry. It was gas-operated rifle with a short-stroke gas piston above the barrel, a breech block mechanism similar to his 1944 carbine, and a curved 30-round magazine. Kalashnikov's rifles AK-1 and AK-2 proved to be reliable weapons and were accepted to second round of competition along with other designs. These prototypes had a rotary bolt, a two-part receiver with separate trigger unit housing, dual controls and a non-reciprocating charging handle located on the left side of the weapon. At first, Kalashnikov was reluctant, given that their rifle had already fared better than its competitors. Eventually, however, Zaytsev managed to persuade Kalashnikov. In November 1947, the new prototypes were completed. It utilized a long-stroke gas piston above the barrel. The upper and lower receivers were combined into a single receiver. The selector and safety were combined into a single control lever, dust cover on the right side of the rifle, and the bolt handle was simply attached to the bolt carrier. This simplified the design and production of the rifle. The first Army trial series began in early 1948. The new rifle proved to be reliable under a wide range of conditions with convenient handling characteristics. In 1949, it was adopted by the Soviet Army as 7.62 mm Kalashnikov assault rifle. Further development. There were many difficulties during the initial phase of production. The first production models had stamped sheet metal receivers with a Miltronin and buttstock insert, and a stamped body. Difficulties were encountered in welding the guide and ejector rails, causing high rejection rates. Instead of halting production, a heavy machined receiver was substituted for the sheet metal receiver. This was a more costly process, but the use of machined receivers accelerated production as tooling and labor for the earlier Mosin Nagant rifles machined receiver were easily adapted. Partly because of these problems, the Soviets were not able to distribute large numbers of the new rifle to soldiers until 1956. During this time, production of the interim SKS rifle continued. Once the manufacturing difficulties of non-milled receivers had been overcome, a redesigned version designated the AKM was introduced in 1959. This new model used a stamped sheet metal receiver and featured a slanted muzzle brake on the end of the barrel to compensate for muzzle rise under recoil. In addition, a hammer retarder was added to prevent the weapon from firing out of battery during rapid or automatic fire. This is also sometimes referred to as a cyclic rate reducer, or simply rate reducer, as it also has the effect of reducing the number of rounds fired per minute during automatic fire. It was also roughly one-third lighter than the previous model. Both licensed and unlicensed production of the Kalashnikov weapons abroad were almost exclusively of the AKM variant, partially due to the much easier production of the stamped receiver. This model is the most commonly encountered, having been produced in much greater quantities. All rifles based on the Kalashnikov design are frequently referred to as AK-47s in the West, although this is only correct when applied to rifles based on the original three receiver types. In most former Eastern Bloc countries, the weapon is known simply as the Kalashnikov, or AK. The differences between the milled and stamped receives including the use of rivets rather than welds on the stamped receiver, as well as the placement of a small dimple above the magazine well for stabilization of the magazine. Replacement. In 1974, the Soviets began replacing their AK-47 and AKM rifles with a newer design, the AK-74, which uses 5.45 times 39 mm ammunition. This new rifle and cartridge had only started to be manufactured in Eastern European nations when the Soviet Union collapsed, drastically slowing production of the AK-74 and other weapons of the former Soviet bloc.